The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting an unforgiving glare across the sterile office environment. I'm Rachel Monroe, a 52-year-old marketing specialist who spent 3 decades climbing the corporate ladder at Sterling & Company, only to find myself perched precariously on its upper rungs with nothing but empty promises and broken dreams to show for it. The weight of my decision pressed heavily against my ribcage as I stood before the frosted glass door bearing the name Charles Whitman Senior Vice President, in bold, gold letters. My hand trembled slightly as I gripped the manila envelope containing my resignation letter, the culmination of sleepless nights and countless what-if scenarios that had haunted me since last quarter's disastrous performance review. Charles's words from that meeting still echoed in my mind. "At your age, Rachel, perhaps you're just not keeping up with the times." His patronizing smile had been worse than any criticism he could have delivered. The memory sent a fresh wave of determination coursing through my veins. This was no longer about pride or ego, this was survival. I'd watched too many colleagues pushed out during their 50s, left to flounder in a job market that seemed to value youth above experience. 28 years of loyal service to this company, and they were willing to discard me like yesterday's memo. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the heavy door without waiting for his assistant's confirmation. Charles sat behind his massive mahogany desk, his perfectly coiffed silver hair catching the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His expression shifted from surprise to mild irritation as he looked up from his tablet. "Rachel," he greeted, his voice carrying that familiar condescending tone. "I wasn't expecting you. Shouldn't you be preparing for the Johnson account presentation?" The irony stung. The very presentation I'd poured months into developing, only to have Charles assign the final delivery to Jennifer, the ambitious 27-year-old associate who'd been eyeing my position for months. But I didn't falter. Instead, I stepped forward and placed the envelope squarely in the center of his pristine desk. "I'm resigning," I announced, my voice steadier than I felt. "Effective immediately." For a moment, Charles simply stared at me, his perfectly manicured eyebrows arching in disbelief. Then slowly, a smirk began to spread across his face. It started as a twitch at the corner of his mouth, growing until it became a full-blown grin. And then he laughed, a deep throaty chuckle that quickly escalated into genuine mirth. "Oh Rachel," he managed between gasps of laughter. "Good luck finding another job at your old age. In today's market, with all these young hotshots coming up, you'll be lucky to get a receptionist position." His words hit me like a physical blow, but I maintained my composure, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me waver. The office around us seemed to fade away as memories flooded back. Late nights spent perfecting campaigns, mentoring younger employees who now barely acknowledged my existence, watching positions I was qualified for go to less experienced candidates half my age. "You know, Charles," I said, my voice cold and steady, "this company has taken enough from me. My 20s working 60-hour weeks while others partied. My 30s sacrificing family time for every promotion that came my way. My 40s watching men I trained walk right past me into executive positions. Well, I'm done giving." His laughter subsided, replaced by a look of mild annoyance. "Rachel, you're being dramatic. You knew this day would come eventually. No one works forever." "That's where you're wrong," I countered, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "People used to respect experience, wisdom, institutional knowledge. Now it seems companies like ours just want cheap labor they can replace every few years. Well, I refuse to be disposable." Charles leaned back in his chair, studying me with what I recognized as his damage control expression, the same look he gave investors after quarterly losses. "Let's not burn bridges here, Rachel. We can discuss severance packages, maybe even a consulting role. There's no need to make this unpleasant." I shook my head, marveling at how he could still treat this like a business negotiation. "It's already unpleasant, Charles. It's been unpleasant for years. Watching you systematically push out anyone over 45. Seeing talented people forced out because they dared to develop gray hairs. Hearing you tell board members we need fresh blood, when what we really need is seasoned expertise." He sighed dramatically, reaching for his phone. "Fine, Rachel. Have it your way. I'll have HR draw up the paperwork. But remember, you're walking away from a generous benefits package and stock options. And don't expect any recommendations." As if I would want one from him. The realization struck me that this moment marked more than just the end of my career at Sterling & Company. It represented something bigger, a reckoning long overdue in an industry that valued youth over wisdom, appearances over substance, and short-term gains over lasting contributions. I turned to leave but paused at the door, looking back at the man who embodied everything wrong with corporate culture today. You might want to reconsider your strategy, Charles. Experience has a way of proving its worth when you least expect it. His dismissive wave followed me out the door, but I carried something else with me, a spark of defiance that had been smoldering for years, now threatening to ignite into something far greater than either of us could imagine. As I packed my belongings from the office I'd occupied for over a decade, I couldn't help but notice the curious glances from colleagues who'd witnessed my confrontation with Charles. Some offered sympathetic smiles, others looked away uncomfortably, and a few, like Jennifer, watched with barely concealed satisfaction. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt surreal, each floor bringing me closer to freedom but also uncertainty. 52 years old, with decades of experience, a proven track record, and suddenly unemployed in an industry notorious for devouring its veterans. Yet amidst the anxiety bubbling in my stomach, another emotion began to surface: excitement. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, as if I'd shed some invisible chains that had been binding me to a toxic system. Walking through the glass doors of Sterling and Company for the last time, I noticed Mrs. Thompson, the elderly security guard who'd worked there longer than anyone. She nodded approvingly as I passed, her knowing smile suggesting she understood exactly what had transpired upstairs. Outside, the late afternoon sun warmed my face, and I realized I hadn't properly felt sunlight in years, not since my window office had been reassigned to accommodate the new team's open floor plan. The city buzzed around me with its usual chaotic energy, but today it felt different. Each passing stranger seemed to carry potential, every storefront whispered opportunities. My phone buzzed incessantly in my pocket, texts from concerned colleagues, missed calls from Charles's assistant, and a particularly aggressive email notification from HR demanding my immediate return to sign documents. I ignored them all, walking aimlessly through streets I thought I knew intimately but now seemed transformed. In a small coffee shop around the corner, I found myself sitting at a corner table, staring at my untouched latte while memories played out like old movies in my mind. The countless weekends sacrificed for deadline-driven projects, the innovative campaigns launched only to see someone else take credit, the subtle erosion of my confidence through carefully worded criticisms about being set in my ways. Each memory fueled my resolve rather than my regret. A young woman at the next table caught my attention, probably in her early 30s, typing furiously on her laptop while simultaneously conducting a conference call. Her frustration was palpable as she juggled multiple tasks, clearly overwhelmed by responsibilities beyond her experience. I recognized that look. I'd mentored dozens like her, taught them how to manage workloads and navigate corporate politics. Yet somehow, despite my guidance, they always seemed to advance faster, receive better opportunities, and earn more recognition than their older counterparts. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very skills I'd helped cultivate in younger employees were now being used to justify pushing out experienced professionals like myself. A bitter laugh escaped my lips, drawing a curious glance from the barista. But instead of resentment, I felt something unexpected: inspiration. These young professionals weren't the enemy, they were products of the same flawed system that had finally spat me out. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Margaret, a former colleague who'd left Sterling 5 years ago under similar circumstances. Heard about your exit. Want to grab dinner? Her message was accompanied by a winking emoji, suggesting she knew exactly what had transpired. Margaret had gone on to start her own boutique marketing agency after being forced out, and now commanded fees that made Sterling executives green with envy. As I typed out my response, agreeing to meet later that evening, an idea began to form in my mind. What if this wasn't just about finding another job? What if it was about creating something entirely new? Something that valued experience alongside innovation, wisdom alongside creativity? The concept felt both terrifying and exhilarating, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing you could either step back or learn to fly. The hours passed in a blur of thoughts and possibilities. By the time I met Margaret at our favorite Italian restaurant, I had sketched out rough plans on napkins and receipts collected throughout the day. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, we discussed everything from industry trends to personal frustrations, our conversation occasionally interrupted by other former Sterling employees who'd heard about my departure and wanted to share their own stories. What emerged from these conversations was startling: a network of experienced professionals, each with their own tale of being pushed aside, undervalued, or outright dismissed. Marketing directors, financial analysts, project managers, creative leads, all carrying years of invaluable experience but struggling to find meaningful work in an age-obsessed market. The realization hit me like a thunderclap: we weren't alone. This wasn't just my story, it was a collective narrative waiting to be rewritten. Margaret listened intently as I outlined my emerging vision, a consultancy that wouldn't just offer services but would revolutionize how companies approached experience and wisdom in the workplace. Imagine, I explained, gesturing animatedly with my fork, a firm where seasoned professionals partner with younger talent, combining established expertise with fresh perspectives. Where age isn't a barrier but an asset, and experience commands the respect it deserves. Her eyes sparkled with interest, and I could see wheels turning in her mind. You know, she said thoughtfully, swirling her wine, there's a growing market for this. Companies talk about diversity and inclusion, but age rarely makes it into those conversations. Plus, with the current economic climate, businesses are desperate for solutions that actually work, not just trendy buzzwords. The waiter refilled our glasses, and I pulled out my hastily scribbled notes. It's not just about consulting, I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word. We could create workshops, develop mentorship programs, even influence corporate policy. Show companies that investing in experienced professionals isn't just good ethics, it's smart business. Margaret nodded enthusiastically. And we'd have access to a pool of talent that's practically begging for opportunity. People who've been written off but are ready to prove their worth. Hell, Rachel, you could turn this whole situation around and make Charles eat his words. The mention of Charles brought a sly smile to my face. That's exactly what I'm counting on, I replied, feeling a thrill of anticipation. But it's not just about revenge. It's about changing the game entirely. Creating a model that other companies will have to follow or risk falling behind. Our conversation stretched late into the night, growing more detailed and ambitious with each passing hour. By the time we paid our bill, I had a list of potential partners, clients, and collaborators. More importantly, I had a renewed sense of purpose, not just to survive in a hostile job market, but to thrive by creating something that could transform it. Walking home through the quiet city streets, I felt a strange sense of peace mixed with excitement. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, filled with obstacles and doubts. But for the first time in years, I felt truly aligned with my values and capabilities. The corporate world had tried to discard me, but instead of crumbling, I was ready to rise. Not just for myself, but for everyone who'd been told they were too old, too experienced, too wise for modern business. The next morning, I woke with a clarity that startled me. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a visual metaphor for the ideas swirling in my mind. Instead of the usual weekday rush to beat traffic and arrive at the office by 8, I found myself savoring the luxury of time. My first act of this new chapter was peculiar yet profoundly satisfying. I disabled all work-related notifications on my phone. The sudden silence was both unsettling and liberating, like removing a splinter that had been embedded for years. Sitting at my kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee, I opened my laptop and created a new document titled Project Renaissance. The name felt appropriate. This wasn't just a business venture, it was a rebirth of sorts. As I began outlining my vision, memories of past campaigns and strategies flooded back, each one sparking new possibilities for how experienced professionals could revolutionize traditional business models. The first order of business was assembling a core team. I started with Margaret, whose boutique agency had already demonstrated the market demand for experienced leadership. Through her network, I connected with James, a former CFO who'd been pushed out after 30 years in finance, and Priya, a brilliant data analyst who'd walked away from a toxic work environment 6 months pregnant. Each conversation revealed not just individual talents but shared frustrations and dreams, a chorus of voices yearning for change. Our initial meetings took place in various coffee shops and co-working spaces, gradually forming a pattern that felt refreshingly different from traditional corporate settings. Without the constraints of corner offices and power dynamics, ideas flowed freely. James suggested creating a proprietary framework for integrating multi-generational teams, while Priya proposed developing analytics tools to demonstrate the ROI of experience-based strategies. The enthusiasm was contagious, and our group grew organically as word spread among professional networks. Yet the journey wasn't without its challenges. During one particularly difficult week, I received rejection emails from 3 potential clients who cited concerns about outdated methodologies as their reason for declining our proposal. The feedback stung, not because it was necessarily wrong but because it highlighted the exact prejudices we were fighting against. That evening, sitting alone in my apartment, I allowed myself to wallow briefly in self-doubt before remembering Charles's smug face and his dismissive laughter. The memory reignited my determination, transforming disappointment into fuel for innovation. To combat these perceptions, we decided to launch a series of free workshops targeting small businesses and startups, companies typically viewed as bastions of youth culture. Our first event, held in a community center basement, drew a modest crowd of 15 entrepreneurs. But something remarkable happened during that session. A young tech founder openly admitted that his attempts to scale his business had failed precisely because he lacked experienced guidance. Another participant, a millennial running a sustainable fashion brand, confessed that her greatest challenge wasn't creativity but operational wisdom. These revelations sparked intense discussions that lasted hours beyond our scheduled ending time. Participants exchanged contact information, promising to stay connected. As I watched these connections form, I realized we were witnessing the birth of something powerful, a bridge between generations that corporate culture had spent decades trying to dismantle. The momentum continued building. Local business journals picked up our story, focusing not on our ages but on our innovative approach to solving common business challenges. Social media buzzed with testimonials from workshop attendees, leading to inquiries from larger companies curious about our methodology. Each success brought new challenges: scaling operations, managing finances, maintaining quality control, but also new opportunities to refine our mission. One particularly memorable moment came during a panel discussion at a regional business conference. Sitting between a Silicon Valley prodigy and a rising star in fintech, I listened as they debated the merits of AI-driven solutions versus human intuition. When the moderator turned to me, expecting perhaps a defense of traditional methods, I surprised everyone by advocating for integration rather than opposition. AI can process data faster than any human, I explained, but it takes years of experience to understand which questions to ask in the first place. The room erupted in applause, and I spotted several senior executives nodding in agreement. Among them was Michael Chun, CEO of a major retail chain known for its aggressive pursuit of disruptive innovation. After the session, he approached me with genuine interest, not in our services but in our philosophy. "You're onto something important here," he admitted. "Most companies are so focused on chasing the next big thing that they forget the value of wisdom gained through experience." These interactions began shifting the narrative around age and experience in business. We started receiving invitations to speak at industry events, participate in think tanks, and contribute to publications. Each platform provided an opportunity to challenge conventional wisdom and showcase the tangible benefits of embracing professional maturity. Our growing influence even caught the attention of business schools, leading to partnerships for developing case studies and curriculum modules focused on multi-generational leadership. However, the most significant development came unexpectedly through an unlikely source. A former Sterling client, frustrated with the company's declining campaign performance, reached out seeking alternative solutions. Their inquiry led to our first major corporate contract, ironically, working with a brand that Charles himself had been courting for months. The irony wasn't lost on me as I reviewed the terms of engagement, especially the clause emphasizing our unique approach to blending experienced leadership with innovative strategies. As our reputation grew, so did our impact. We began documenting measurable results from our implementations: increased customer retention rates, improved employee satisfaction scores, enhanced operational efficiency. These metrics formed the foundation of a comprehensive white paper that we distributed widely through industry channels. The response was overwhelming, with numerous companies expressing interest in adopting similar models. Yet with success came increasing pressure to maintain momentum. Competitors emerged, attempting to replicate our approach but often missing the crucial elements that made our model effective: genuine respect for experience, authentic collaboration between generations, and a commitment to challenging ageist assumptions in business practices. We responded by refining our methodology, incorporating new technologies while staying true to our core principles. The transformation extended beyond professional achievements. Personally, I found myself reconnecting with aspects of life that had been sacrificed during decades of corporate servitude. Weekends became opportunities for exploration rather than catch-up work. Evenings were filled with meaningful conversations instead of endless emails. Relationships strengthened as friends and family noticed the change in my demeanor, the return of passion and purpose that had been dulled by years of compromise. Perhaps most significantly, I discovered a new kind of leadership within myself. Gone were the days of managing through fear or manipulation, tactics I'd observed and sometimes employed in corporate environments. Instead, I led through empowerment, recognizing that true strength lies in lifting others up rather than climbing over them. This philosophy resonated deeply with our growing team, creating a culture of mutual respect and shared ambition that traditional companies struggle to match. The ripple effects of our work became increasingly visible. Former colleagues who had watched my departure from Sterling with skepticism began reaching out, sharing stories of their own awakenings. Some joined our movement, bringing valuable expertise and connections. Others implemented similar changes within their organizations, citing our success as inspiration. The corporate landscape, once rigid and resistant to change, showed signs of evolution, not wholesale transformation but definite progress toward more inclusive and respectful practices. Financial stability proved more achievable than anticipated. While traditional funding sources initially hesitated to invest in a venture led by seasoned professionals, our demonstrable results attracted forward-thinking angel investors and venture capitalists who recognized the market potential of our approach. The infusion of capital allowed us to expand operations, develop proprietary tools, and establish a formal training program for companies interested in implementing similar models. Our physical presence evolved as well. What began as informal meetings in coffee shops transformed into a vibrant office space designed specifically to foster cross-generational collaboration. Open work areas encouraged spontaneous interaction, while dedicated spaces allowed for focused individual work. The design incorporated elements suggested by team members of all ages, resulting in an environment that respected diverse needs and preferences. Community engagement became another cornerstone of our growth. We partnered with non-profit organizations focused on workforce development, creating internship programs that paired young professionals with experienced mentors. These initiatives produced remarkable results, with participants demonstrating higher job placement rates and better retention statistics than traditional programs. The success caught the attention of government agencies exploring solutions to aging workforce challenges, leading to consultations on policy development. As our influence expanded, so did the scope of our ambitions. We began exploring international markets, adapting our model to different cultural contexts while maintaining core principles. The global nature of business meant age discrimination wasn't limited to Western corporate culture, and our approach resonated with professionals worldwide facing similar challenges. Virtual collaborations and international conferences became regular features of our schedule, broadening perspectives and enriching our methodology. The media attention continued growing, but rather than seeking publicity, we focused on substantive impact. Major business publications featured in-depth analyses of our model, while industry leaders publicly acknowledged the effectiveness of our approach. Academic institutions incorporated our case studies into their curricula, ensuring that future business leaders would inherit a more nuanced understanding of experience and innovation. Through all these developments, I remained acutely aware of the responsibility we carried. Every success story validated our mission, but each setback reminded us of the work still needed. The corporate world was changing, but change required constant vigilance and adaptation. Our role wasn't just to provide services but to serve as a catalyst for broader transformation, to demonstrate through action that age and experience could drive innovation rather than hinder it. The journey from Charles's dismissive laughter to this point had been neither linear nor predictable. It demanded courage, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to values that had nearly been extinguished by years of corporate conditioning. Yet every challenge overcome, every prejudice confronted, and every success achieved reinforced the fundamental truth that had guided me from the beginning: experience isn't a liability to be managed but a powerful asset to be embraced. Looking back at the path traveled, I recognized how each obstacle had shaped not just our organization but the industry itself. The corporate world still bore scars of ageism, but cracks were appearing in its foundation, cracks we had helped create. These fractures represented opportunities for growth, spaces where new approaches could take root and flourish. And as I prepared for the next phase of our evolution, I understood that our greatest achievement wasn't merely surviving corporate culture's attempt to discard us, but thriving by transforming it from within. Months later, I stood at the podium of a prestigious business conference, addressing a room filled with executives, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders. On the screen behind me was a slide that read, "Experience Reimagined, the Future of Leadership." As I shared our journey, From the day Charles laughed at my resignation to building a revolutionary consultancy that had transformed how companies valued seasoned professionals, I noticed him sitting in the front row. Charles looked uneasy, shifting in his seat as murmurs spread through the audience when I briefly recounted his dismissive words. But instead of bitterness, I felt only calm satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge, it was about proving a point far greater than either of us. When the presentation ended, the room erupted into applause. People lined up to speak with me, their eyes alight with inspiration. And then, almost as an afterthought, Charles approached. For a moment, he just stood there, his polished veneer cracking under the weight of humility. "You were right," he admitted quietly, extending his hand. "Sterling and Company could learn a lot from what you've built." I shook his hand firmly, meeting his gaze without malice. "It's never too late to change," I said with a smile. "Even for people who think they know better." As I walked away, I realized the laughter that once echoed in that office now seemed hollow, a distant memory drowned out by the roar of progress. My journey wasn't just my own anymore, it belonged to every person who'd been told they were too old, too experienced, or too wise to matter. Together, we hadn't just rewritten the rules, we created a new game entirely. And this time, everyone was invited to play.